It's February 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with defense cooperation between South Korea and Saudi Arabia. South Korea will export 10 of its homegrown Cheonggung-2 missile defense systems to the kingdom in a $3.2 billion deal. It's the second round of such exports to the Middle East after securing a deal with UAE back in 2022. The South Korean government decided to raise the medical school admissions quota by 2,000 by 2025 to alleviate a chronic shortage of physicians. Doctors' groups are pledged to go on strike, which the government warns will be met with consequences. Qatar says Hamas has given a generally positive response to a proposed truce deal with Israel, while Israel says it has let the families of 31 hostages know that their relatives are dead. South Korea will ship 10 of its domestically developed Cheonggung-2 medium-range surface-to-air missile batteries to Saudi Arabia. The $3.2 billion contract is the second sale of the system to a Middle Eastern country. Our Lee Eun-hee reports.
South Korea has announced the deal to export to Saudi Arabia 10 MSAM-2 mid-range surface-to-air missile batteries. According to Seoul's defense ministry on Tuesday, the deal, worth some 4.2 trillion Korean won, or $3.2 billion was sealed last November between South Korean defense firm LIG Next One and the Saudi Arabian Defense Ministry. The core weapon system of Korea air and missile defense, called the Cheonggung, MSAM-2, provides defense against air attacks and surface-to-air defense capability against aircraft. Also known as the Korean Patriot, the MSAM-2 uses hit-to-kill missiles capable of intercepting incoming missiles. The system is a key force in lower-tier defense, which aims to intercept missiles at an altitude of 30 to 40 kilometers. The advanced technology system includes simultaneous engagement of multiple targets, high mobility with canard and side jet thrusters, and direct targeting with a power-enhancing warhead. This is LIG Next One's second export deal. It previously signed the deal with the United Arab Emirates in 2022. Meanwhile, as part of a visit to the Middle East, South Korea's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik and his Saudi Arabian counterpart signed the Memorandum of Understanding on Sunday in Riyadh. Under the MOU, the two countries will establish a joint committee to cooperate in research and weapons development in the mid to long term. On Tuesday, Shin visited Qatar and signed an MOU on furthering the two countries' defense and arms cooperation in light of the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic relations this year. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the medical school admissions quota will be increased by 2,000 per year starting in 2025. Now, that is to address the chronic shortage of physicians here in South Korea. Lee Si-hoo reports.
Beginning next year, the South Korean government is increasing the total enrollment quota for the country's medical schools by 2,000 per year. This means a total of 5,058 students will be entering med schools every year, a drastic hike from the quota of 3,058 that's been frozen since 2006. All this comes as South Korea aims to provide quality health care for all, especially for those in rural areas and those in need of essential care.
급속한 고령화와 보건산업 수요에 대응할 의료 인력까지 포함하면 2035년까지 약 1만 5천 명의 의사가 더 필요한 것으로 추산되고 있습니다. 국민의 건강과 생명을 지키기 위해 의사 인력 확대는 더 이상 늦출 수 없는 시대적 과제입니다.
Following President Yoon's comments on Tuesday, Health Minister Jo Kyu-hong, speaking at a ministry briefing, reiterated the reason for the hike.
2,000 more medical students a year would mean as many as 10,000 doctors entering the workforce after training between 2031 and 2035.
Cho said that while this does not exactly meet the estimated demand, the government will continue to periodically evaluate and manage supply and demand. In the process, the government will take into consideration relevant factors such as the advancement of healthcare technology, the aging population, and any future pandemic situations. Meanwhile, the health ministry has vowed that it will work to build a robust regional healthcare system by making sure that a certain percentage of the student body of medical schools outside of the capital area is filled by students from the local region. The specific size of the enrollment by school will be announced later after a review and discussion with the Education Ministry. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
And not everyone in the medical sector is welcoming the government's plan. Doctors are threatening to take collective action, including a nationwide strike. Song Yu-jin has more.
The medical school quota increase has been a topic of heated debate here in South Korea. The government has been pushing for an expansion to address the shortage of doctors in a country where there are only 2.6 physicians per 1,000 people, far below the OECD average of 3.7. However, this proposal has triggered strong opposition from many doctors in the country. At an emergency press conference on Tuesday, the Korean Medical Association warned of a nationwide strike if the government unilaterally proceeds with the decision to raise the quota.
This has the potential to stir up issues in our national health insurance system, which is on track to turn into a deficit this year and is anticipated to experience a decrease in accumulated funds. There are also concerns about the increase in social costs and the risk of our natural sciences education taking a hit, a critical field in enhancing Korea's competitiveness.
The association, consisting of around 140,000 doctors and medical students, has been critical of the government's plan, arguing that fundamental measures should come first. This includes enhancing the working environment for physicians through better pay or exploring methods to better allocate them so that certain areas of medicine do not experience a lack of doctors. In response, the Korean Health and Medical Workers Union, made up of nurses, caregivers, and healthcare workers, issued a press release dismissing the KMA's actions as an unjustifiable coercion. The union says increasing the number of doctors is supported by the majority of the general public, as it can prevent illegal medical practices and is crucial to enhancing the overall quality of medical services. It also challenged the KMA, calling the government's decision unilateral, emphasizing that the Ministry of Health and Welfare has engaged in dozens of meetings and consultations with the association. If a strike does happen, the health ministry has warned of countermeasures, such as an immediate return to work order. Those who do not comply may face a license suspension of up to a year, imprisonment for a maximum of 3 years, or a fine up to 30 million Korean won, which is around $22,500 US. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
The OECD forecasts the South Korean economy will not grow as much as expected in 2024. But overall, things are looking better globally this year. For more, we're joined by Professor Shin Se-dun this morning. Welcome back, Professor.
Good morning.
Good morning. South Korea's finance ministry took a rather careful approach that regarding the OECD report, the 2.2 growth projection is based on the South government's 2024 economic policy directions. Is that so? I mean, should we actually be concerned?
Well, we don't know why OECD has lowered its projection for economic growth for 2024. But during the 3 months between November and February, you could see that there has been two important developments in Korea. One is the stock market in Korea has been very sluggish in the month of January. Actually, the Kospi index has dropped about 7%, which is very rare compared to other countries. Another thing is, for the last 3 months, consumer sales. Consumer sales has been dropping 2% in the fourth quarter of last year. So I think the very poor performances in stock market, on the one hand, and very poor performances in retail sale for the last quarter of 2023, I think that has made OECD to lower economic projection by 1/10 percentage point.
That's a very good point. But Professor, some experts say it's going to be actually hard to fill the 2% growth rate this year. What does that mean? I mean, if we just look at the numbers, it doesn't make sense considering South Korea only posted 1.4% growth last year.
Right, right. Even if Korea grows at about 2% this year, many people don't feel it's better than last year, at which the growth rate was 1.4%. There are, I think, about three reasons. One, there has been developing a huge pile of inventory. Those inventory is regarded as investment, and it is included, and it makes economic growth a little higher. So one problem is huge stockpile of inventory that has made people to feel less about 2% economic growth. And second thing is huge reduction in import. Last year, import has been decreased about 12%, and that decrease in 12% in imports is going to contribute to higher economic growth. Another point, third point, which is very important in Korea, is the 2% economic growth is contributed by a small number of industries like semiconductors and automobile. So all the other industries are feeling very poor performances in 2023 and this year 2024. So inventory and negative imports and the polarization, I think, is the reason why people don't feel Korean economy is growing 2%.
Definitely. Professor Shin, we also have to talk about the global economy on the front. Now, that is expected to expand at 2.9%. That's up from an estimate of 2.7% announced back in November. Can we see this as a brighter outlook? I mean, it's still lower than the 2023 annual growth of 3.1%.
Yeah. Well, one reason is, surprisingly, United States economy is growing very fast. Everybody believed, by interest rate higher than 5%, definitely United States economy would go down. But that was not true. 2023, it is projected to be 2.5% in the United States. Still, the OECD and many institutions believe that economic growth this year for the United States will be a little lower, but surprisingly very high. That is one thing that the global economy it seems to be better. And another thing is inflation is stabilizing very fast. So that means that sooner or later, all over the world, the central banks will be lowering the interest rate. And that lowerment in interest rate will contribute to increase in consumption, increase in investment. That's why the year 2024 is better than 2023, and 2025 will be still better than 2024. So I think the resilience in the United States economy and a very fast stabilization of inflation globally, that I think is going to contribute future, prospects a little better than we would have expected in the past.
I see. Professor Shin, I know we still have a long way to go, but OECD believes the growth in the global economy to hit 3% in 2024 next year. Where is this confidence coming from?
Yeah, that is, as I said, U.S. economy is doing pretty good. And especially, many countries like India, Indonesia, Australia, Italy, those countries are surprisingly doing pretty good, except for possibly China. And in this case, Korea, they lowered the economic projection a little bit. But generally speaking, I think inflation is going to stabilize. And the U.S. and many other European countries are doing pretty good. That, I think, will contribute for better future in 2024 and possibly 2025.
So it's based on the better than expected performance by major countries, maybe not the China, but U.S., Italy, like you said, G7 countries, right?
Right.
All right, Professor Shin Se-dong, thank you as always for your insight. You have a great day.
Always my pleasure.
Qatar says Hamas has given a generally positive response to a proposed truce deal with Israel. Now, the news comes as the UN reported 67% of the Gaza Strip is now under an evacuation order. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Qatar says Hamas has given a generally positive response to a proposed truce deal with Israel, as the militant group reiterated its call for an end to the Israeli assault on Gaza. According to Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani, Hamas had a positive response to the proposed deal being brokered by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt, but did not provide further details. Hamas said in a statement that its leadership had reviewed the ceasefire deal with a positive spirit, including details of securing relief and shelter, reconstruction, the lifting of a 17-year-old crippling siege, and the completion of the prisoner exchange process. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is once again in the Middle East, will meet with Israeli officials and discuss the proposed truce deal. Meanwhile, Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari said Tuesday that more than $150 million were transferred from Iran to the militant group, adding the funds were utilized by Hamas to sustain its operations underground. Hagari also underscored the implications of Iran's support for terrorism, adding it may extend beyond the Middle East region. Updating on the Israeli hostages held by Hamas, the spokesman said that 31 of the hostages held in Gaza are confirmed to have died. Israel has said 136 hostages are still being held in Gaza. With the armed conflict between Israel and Hamas now spanning 4 months, the UN says Israel's evacuation orders in the Gaza Strip now cover 2/3 of the territory. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said Tuesday that more than half of Gaza's population is now crammed into the town of Rafah on the border with Egypt and surrounding areas. 이승재, Arirang News.
The New York Times reported Tuesday that Moscow had released $9 million worth of frozen North Korean assets after Pyongyang provided them with weapons for its war in Ukraine. The report cited anonymous Western intelligence officials, but did not identify the Russian bank that released the funds from the $30 million in frozen North Korean assets being held. Sources say the arrangement occurred sometime after the North sent arms. And Washington said last month that Russia had fired at least one of the missiles given by the North at Ukraine. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yol spoke on the phone with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on Tuesday, marking the first conversation between the two officials since Cho was appointed last month. During the 50-minute call, Wang invited Cho to visit Beijing to further develop bilateral relations. In response, Cho agreed to schedule a visit via diplomatic channels at a time that's convenient for both sides. The top diplomats also agreed on the importance of managing supply chain stability and decided to seek new sources of development through deepening bilateral trade and investment. On North Korea, Cho urged Beijing to play a constructive role in bringing Pyongyang to dialogue and expressed concerns about North Korean defectors being forcibly sent back to China. An increasing number of North Koreans hold a negative view of their leader Kim Jong-un, according to South Korea's Unification Ministry. And food shortages in the north may be worse than already known. Kim Jong-sil has this report.
An extensive record of the voices of people who have left North Korea creates a stark image. Unlike what people have been led to believe, the reality of the lives of North Koreans under the regime may have been much harsher than imagined. On Tuesday, the government here released a comprehensive report on the North's economy and its society at large. The report is based on a trove of information that had been kept confidential until now. This is a report that holds the voices of 6,351 North Korean defectors. The Ministry of Unification says this will give valuable insight into understanding the reality of the regime that's closed and isolated from the world. Research experts asked each defector more than 1,100 questions on a one-on-one basis. According to the report, 72.2% said they had not received any food rations from the state once Kim Jong-un became the leader of the North. More than 50% said they received neither food rations nor wages in exchange for work. The ministry said this indicates the regime has been exploiting people by stressing passion and loyalty without paying wages. However, the defectors said most North Korean residents were now having 3 meals a day instead of 2.
Some assessed that the lives of North Koreans had improved, with many buildings being built in Pyongyang ever since Kim Jong-un came to power. But based on our research, this is a mere optical illusion, and the lives of the residents have actually become harsher.
The report said that bribery has doubled since Kim took power, with most residents believing that the gap between the rich and poor in the north has widened. 56.3% of those questioned said they felt negatively about the change of leadership in the north. The ministry gave extensive data in the form of numbers, which it hopes will allow the public and the international community to get a better understanding of the regime's reality. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the US, a federal appeals panel unanimously ruled that former President Donald Trump does not have presidential immunity in his 2020 election interference case. The appeals court's decision rejects the former president's claims that he is immune from the related criminal charges and leaves Trump open to prosecution. Trump has been charged with conspiracy to overturn President Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election and with committing fraud in an attempt to remain in office. In January 2021, a mob of Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. in an effort to overturn his election defeat. The case's trial was initially scheduled for March 4th, but has been postponed until Trump's immunity claim plays out. In the UK, King Charles was seen in public for the first time on Tuesday since it was made public that he was suffering from cancer. Charles was seen waving and smiling to passers-by in a car with Queen Camilla while on a short drive from his home, Clarence House in central London, to Buckingham Palace on Tuesday afternoon. It is believed that Charles and Camilla left on board the royal household helicopter later that day, departing for Sandringham Estate. Buckingham Palace announced on Monday that the 75-year-old king had been diagnosed with a form of cancer during his recent treatment of a benign enlarged prostate. In Hong Kong, the chief executive of the region, John Lee, has publicly complained about football superstar Lionel Messi's failure to play in a match between Inter Miami and a local team. Speaking Tuesday, Lee demanded that organizers explain why Messi could not play, saying the Hong Kong government was disappointed that a detailed explanation was not provided promptly. The game's organizer, Tatler Asia CEO Michel Lamounière, apologized at press conference on Monday, saying that star players will play if they are fit. Fans were left disappointed at the sold-out Hong Kong stadium on Sunday as star player Messi sat on the bench as Inter Miami beat a Hong Kong 11 4-1. Inter Miami was booed off the field by some 38,000 spectators, with fans later demanding refunds. To Japan now, where this year's Miss Japan beauty pageant winner renounced her title after the magazine revealed she had an affair with a married man. Ukraine-born Karolina Shino, who was crowned Miss Japan in January, renounced her crown and resigned from her modeling agency after the weekly Bunshin magazine reported her relationship with a married doctor. Initially, Shino claimed that she did not know he was married, but later she said she was aware of her partner's status and that he had a family. Shino has apologized on social media, as well as to the man's partner and his family. Miss Japan organizers said on Tuesday that following Shino's renunciation, the 2024 winner spot will remain empty. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good morning. Late winter weather continues today with afternoon temperatures forecast to go up similar to yesterday. Then we'll end this week's work week tomorrow with warmer than average temperatures. Some inland regions will have high levels of ultrafine dust during the first half of the day. Then more dust will blow in overnight, boosting dust levels to bad levels. Meanwhile, Gangwon-do province will see less than 1 centimeter of snowfall. Central regions and Gyeongsang-pukdo could see snow flurries passing by during the day today. It is a chillier morning than at the same time yesterday, but highs will go up near season norms. Seoul topping out at 4 degrees, Daegu at 7 degrees Celsius this afternoon with a glimpse of sunshine, but Jeollado and nearby areas will be under much brighter skies today. The weather looks promising for the Seollal holiday weekend under fairly sunny skies, but with freezing morning temperatures. Then we'll get one step closer to spring after the Lunar New Year holiday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Making news just for you. It's February 7th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Park Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
And Kwon Ji-hyun. Hello. Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. South Korea has decided to expand the enrollment quota for medical school for the first time in 19 years. Officials on Tuesday said they would increase the total number of students by 2,000 to tackle the country's long unresolved doctor shortage. The enrollment cap had been at 3,058 since 2006. For 5 years, it will be increased to 5,058. The Korea Medical Association has been against this measure and threatened to go on a general strike, but the government pointed to the dire healthcare needs of Korea's aging population and explained that the latest measure aims to ensure adequate medical staffing even in rural areas. Moving on, we're into the second month of 2024, and we've already seen a lot of South Koreans travel abroad. A local travel agency called Mode Tour found that the number of outbound travelers in January increased by 107% on year to more than 187,000. This was the highest figure since February 2020, which was just before COVID-19 really hit travel hard. The most popular destination was Southeast Asia and then Japan. Seoul's Unification Ministry released a 280-page report on North Korea's socio-economic situation on Tuesday. It is the first of its kind based on in-depth interviews with over 6,300 defectors between the years 2013 and 2022. One notable finding was 43.8% of defectors saying Kim Jong-un's power succession was inappropriate. The amount of people who thought his leadership was illegitimate increased to 56.3% the longer they had been in North Korea. The report analyzed that a growing negative public sentiment is forming towards the Baekdu bloodline-based leadership system. Now, the Baekdu bloodline has long been the standing roots of where Kim Jong-un and his predecessors, like his father Kim Jong-il and grandfather Kim Il-sung, gained power. It's propaganda idolizing the ruling family because they were supposedly born on Mount Baekdu, the highest peak on the Korean peninsula. Kim Jong-il, though, wasn't born here. He was actually born in the far eastern Russian city of Khabarovsk, and the report also shed light on the reality of North Korea at the moment. 9 out of 10 defectors said that North Korea's food rationing system had collapsed. Those who left the North after 2012 recalled 68% of their income coming from non-official income sources. And a growing number of people also said they had more access to outside information, with around 36% of defectors saying that they had phones. But they pointed to how internet access was close to impossible and how Kim Jong-un had been tightening his grip over North Koreans watching movies or dramas produced from other countries, namely South Korea. Now, here in the studio, it is the first time the Unification Ministry released a report of this kind. Of the many different findings there, which fact really fascinated you you the most?
Well, the report wasn't that surprising to me, because I do believe that many people already know that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's rise to key is inappropriate. More than 50% of defectors say that they have a negative view of him as a leader, and there is growing dissatisfaction with Baekdu 혈통 or Baekdu bloodline-based leadership. Yes, the survey is quite informative indeed, but there is only one person who should do this homework. He should read this article. Indeed, we do know that the North Korean leader has access to Korean internet, so why don't he take a look and be a brand new person in 2024?
Exactly. Instead of us doing the homework, I think Kim Jong-un should be reading the report to find out how the reality is in North Korea. What about you, Kyun? What did you think about this?
No, I do agree with you. And it doesn't seem like a big surprise at all, but at the same time, it's hard to imagine a country only like a couple of 100 kilometers away from Seoul. People are suffering from food shortages and not being paid for work and being exploited of basic human rights. The reality of North Korea is much harder than imagined, or I imagined, and the reclusive regime is not as closed as before with open information around the world. And I think this is a good reality check for North Korea now that the international community is better aware of their socio-economic status, and I hope that person up north really does something about this.
Exactly, and not only them, I think it really garnered attention as to what we need to be doing for North Korea as well, because humanitarian aid is critical, but it's really hard given that they are a reclusive regime. And let's switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. South Korea has been trying to reform its family-related laws to expand the concept of what makes up a family. 3 years ago, the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family laid out a basic framework to revise the current law that stipulates a family only involves direct relatives by blood, siblings, or a spouse. The ministry instead has been trying to recognize non-traditional types of families, including people who are unmarried, cohabiting couples, or even single-parent households, and ensure that they receive the same rights and protection as traditional families. And this has already been happening in France. My AI voice secretary will bring you the details.
Back in 1999, France adopted the Pacte Civil de Solidarité, a framework that legally recognizes two adults who wish to live together or formalize their relationship without getting married. Couples recognized under Pacts are eligible for many benefits married couples have, including tax, healthcare, and even child support. Recently, the number of Pacs couples reached an all-time high. A statistics compilation agency in France found that the number of couples who signed up in 2022 alone reached 209,827. Here in South Korea, young people are asking officials to implement a similar framework, specifically supporting and giving out subsidies to cohabiting couples just as the government would do to married couples.
France's low birth rate problem has also been solved through Pacs. 60% of France's newborns were from Pacs couples. And South Korea is experiencing an aging population and is home to the lowest birth rate in the world. And this is why young couples want officials here in the country to implement a similar system. So here in the studio, what do you guys think would be the pros and cons of us giving out tax or welfare benefits to cohabiting couples here in Korea?
I guess the biggest pro would be that it is a much simpler form of marriage in a nutshell. The process of cohabitation doesn't involve too many legal documents when signing up nor ending the contract. Hence, it gives you more freedom from sensitive issues like property division, child custody if you have any children, and you're left with no legal records when you do choose to separate. So I think this system does look attractive to many young couples thinking of marriage, as they can receive all the tax benefits and welfare benefits, just like that of a married couple. I think the general notion of marriage, especially here in Korea, has become a big burden to many youngsters. So this system, like the Pacs, may alleviate that load marriage actually carries.
Right. I think you mentioned a really good point there. I think our generation has a tendency to wanting to enjoy the pros of a relationship, which is stability, and even, for instance, once we legalize it, financial benefits. But we're really afraid of commitment or the responsibilities that come forth with it. Would you like to elaborate on the pros and cons of us legalizing cohabitating couples?
Of course. Since Kyuni mentioned about the advantages of the system, let me talk about the disadvantages. Receiving benefits while having fewer responsibilities in the relationship can lead to various problems. For example, this system does not automatically grant parental rights and custody for the father. This means the system is not protecting mothers. It infringes the right of the mother, and eventually it threatens the rights of the child's well-being. I'm sure that you have heard about the 생활 동반자법, which is life companion law in English. Life companion law allows any gender, any people, regardless of their gender, they can form a family, they can become a family. Whereas this system is just limited to male and female couples. So many people ask and criticize, is this system mainly to increase birth rate?
Well, it is, because it seems like we are having a very big demographic crisis, and a survey recently showed around 6 out of 10 people here in Korea believe France's PAC system could help with our low birth rate. A big proportion of South Koreans for PACs were also in their 20s and 30s, so we're now going to delve into how our generation in particular views cohabiting compared to the older generation.
Right, the perception of cohabitation has become much more lenient and acceptable to the younger generation, including myself. But I highly doubt the older generation in Korea even thought of this kind of concept of living together, because marriage was seen as something you had to do at a fairly young age and have at least 2 or more children, while getting a divorce was kind of like the last resort, no matter what happened to you. But statistics show how open people are in their 20s and 30s when they think about marriage. So let's take a look at the screen to give you a better idea. According to a survey conducted by Statistics Korea last year, 81% of Korean MZers said they are for cohabitation without getting married. This is a 20% increase from 10 years ago. So we can clearly see the change in young people's perception towards cohabitation. I too think this will be a pretty good way to test the water out before diving right into marriage. But there is nothing wrong with getting a divorce these days, but it comes with many disadvantages and, of course, a lot of emotional suffering that takes long time to actually overcome.
And overcome, heal from, which is completely understandable. And as you mentioned, it's not like our generation is thwarting or very against divorce. It's just the fact that we are more open to the concept of cohabiting. Now, Juyeon, would you like to add on to why there seems to be a generational gap, but our generation seems to be a little bit more open, right?
Indeed. But I can't say that the perception of cohabitation is entirely positive.
True.
Because of the Confucian values in Korean society, the country tends to be very conservative when it comes to gender issues. So let's suppose that this is Joseon dynasty, then it means that we can't sit next to Hyun.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I have a close friend.
You guys should be on the ground.
We should be on the ground because
not in the same room.
Not in the same room.
Indeed.
In the same room.
For background knowledge, like in the Joseon dynasty, up to the age of 7, maybe you could be with another male or like a little young boy toddler, but then after 7, you had to be in separate rooms.
Right. I do agree with that. Well, I have a close friend. She's in her 20s, and she told me that she is living with her boyfriend. But she told me this story after we formed a very deep and close relationship. I know that she had told her story to a couple of friends, including me and her mother, but not to her father and her co-workers. She has no plans to share her stories to her co-workers at all. I think it seems that she is concerned about the societal perception of cohabitation and the prejudice that she might face in the future.
Because there is that still remnant stigma towards the fact that a couple, especially if you're not married, are living together. Even though our generation is leading this type of trend, the generational gap seems to bring about a societal atmosphere where we're quite conservative. But we're now going to hear what a French Gen Z has to say on what South Korea views about cohabiting and her thoughts about the frameworks like PACs and whether it could be practical here in South Korea. Stay tuned for our live interview. We're now going to include a French Gen Z in our talks. It's Marie Clements Oricott. Welcome, Marie.
Hello.
All right, Marie, we're talking about cohabiting today, and France seems to be the epitome of it with the PACS framework. So have you ever heard about this, and what do you and your other friends think about this policy?
Yes, I did. In fact, it's really famous in France. So PACS is the acronym for Solidarity Civil Pact, and it's a contract between two adults of the same sex or different sex to organize their life together. It was created in 1999 and establishes rights and obligations in terms of material support for housing, assets, taxes, and social rights. Young people, including my friends and me, have a good opinion on PACS because it remains much less expensive than marriage, with quite the same similarities and requires less commitment in the long term. The contract is designed to be put in place quickly so couples can take benefits from the advantages as soon as possible, and it includes several flexible choices. Lots of MZers consider PACS as a trial period to make sure they're making the good decision without losing money or time.
That sounds very interesting, Marie. How common is cohabiting and accepting such couples as a new form of family making in France?
It's highly common, and it's getting even more common. The number of PACS continues to increase over time, and there were almost as many marriages as PACS in 2022, which represent more than 200,000 PACS this year. It shows the willingness of the French people to commit in a long-term relationship other than the traditional way of marriage. And it's mainly due to the similarities the PACS has to offer, but being more flexible and cheaper. And it's also the best option for young couples or even older couples in this economy.
Interesting, Maureen. So what do you think about Korea's perception of cohabitation? Though a growing number of young adults are becoming more open to this topic, we aren't as accepting of this new form of family structure compared to France. So what are your thoughts on this?
I do understand Korea's perception is not that much positive and open to the idea of PACS. I think it's mainly due because Korea and France have a different cultural and historical backgrounds, of course. But as an advocate of PACS, I hope that Korea sees the bright sides of the system and that it can help people save the time and money, as I said earlier. Also, it can be beneficial for emotional and mental health, as PACS can help find a partner with whom you truly want to have kids with.
And do you think it might boost our birth rates here? Because we are home to the lowest birth rates in the world. Would a PACS system allow us to boost this up?
I'm not really an expert in this field, so it's quite a difficult question. And unfortunately, I didn't find any studies online showing that the growing number of PACS impacted the birth rate in France. But getting PACS before getting married can ensure a better and a longer relationship that may increase the birth rates. And in this economy, I think that Korean people needs to be legally protected in another way than the marriage. That would be easier and less expensive for them, leading the Korean couples to a different way of life. That could help them feel better and wants to start a family.
Exactly. With globalization, I think now is the time for us to expand the definition of what we consider a traditional family. Thank you so much, Marie. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
All right. And we asked what other millennials and Gen Z around the world thought about cohabiting through our viewers. Here's what 3 of them had to share with us. Take a look at the screen to find out. Let's start with Benny. Benny said, I'm from the Philippines, and I see those who are in cohabitation. They really want to stick together in the house or his or her partner, since the cost of living is really high these days. Cesar said, I'm from Seattle, but the reality is that cohabitation increases the likelihood that the relationship will fail. If you want the romance to last forever, it's best not to cohabit and instead wait until marriage marriage. Leon said living together allows couples to assess their compatibility before marriage. Sharing living expenses can also lead to financial savings for both partners. Furthermore, cohabiting partners can provide each other with emotional support on a daily basis and experience the day-to-day realities of life together. Now, before I end off our discussion, I would like to ask you the question I asked Marie. Do you think birth rates will go up if we legally recognize cohabiting couples as another form of family?
Yes, I think so. Just by looking at France, we can see the positive effects of cohabitation as it may eventually lead to an increase in birth rates, which is something South Korea is in most need of. I understand and feel that marriage comes with a lot of financial burden, but if you receive most of the benefits of a married couple, this will encourage more young couples to take this preliminary step and eventually tie the knot and, start a family.
It could be a good initial step.
Definitely.
For sure. What about you, Jian?
Well, I reckon this system will not increase the birth rate.
Okay.
Yes, it is good. By introducing the system, the government plans to reduce the burden of marriage and give more benefits to the couples so that it can lead to more childbirth. But if we don't get rid of the perception of cohabitation, if the perception of cohabitation doesn't change at all in this Korean society, it seems that couples who choose to, cohabit, there is a low possibility that they will have children in the future.
Because as you mentioned, even with the anecdote of your friend, that friend couldn't really tell her co-workers or even her father that she was cohabiting with her partner, but let alone if you have a child. Will you let people know that you had a child with someone that you're not married to? I think the societal atmosphere still needs a lot of work. And another good point that I would like to mention is there seems to be a generational gap when it comes to cohabitation and the way we view it. But nonetheless, as Kyun mentioned before in the stats, our generation seems to be much open to it. Then do you think we'll see more of it, starting with yourself here in Korea?
Yes, before I talk about myself, South Korea is in a dire situation right now when it comes to birth rates, and therefore I think they need to try out all sorts of different measures to bring the rate back up. If cohabitation can lead to more marriages, it will be a good start. However, there are many other factors that stop women from having children, which is another issue that needs to be tackled altogether. And cohabitation, I'm actually open to cohabitation. If that leads to, like I said, marriage, and obviously you need to get married to have kids. You don't really legally have to get married to have kids, but that's the norm right now. It's always been the norm. So I think if that helps me to tie the knot and settle down, both financially and living together, I think. Yeah, I might try it. I might try it out. Yeah, why not?
It'd be a good trial run with a lot of benefits you can reap in advance. Now, what about you, Jian? Where do you stand?
Well, yes, I agree with that. The trend of cohabiting couples is likely to increase in the future, leading to a more diverse range of family structures. So in order to face these dynamic family structures, the government should implement the right policy systems and rules for them, not just for them.
Exactly.
Yes, the couples would like to have a stable life. They would like to raise their child in a stable, supportive and inclusive society.
Exactly, and I think it all comes down to perspective and perception. And in order for us to do that, I think we need to also consider that traditional families, though we're expanding it to cohabiting, it should also be expanded to all types of couples out there, whether it be same-sex couples or single households. Hopefully we'll see more expansion there. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Ki-hoon.
It was a pleasure.
And Kwon Ji-hyun.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠.